Hey guys, welcome back to Tethan Props. Today I'm going to show you how I went about making this really huge, essentially double-sided lightsaber that is based on Legolas's bow from the Fellowship of the Ring. So this is one that is called the Mirkwood bow. He uses it before they go to Lothlorien and he gets his bow replaced by Galadriel, but this is my favorite of the two bows because it's just a classic design. So I thought I'd make it into a lightsaber. To go along with it, I also made these lightsaber arrows. So these lightsaber arrows have resin casted tips on them. So I'll go into how I made those, but I've got a blue one and a green one. So, can you guess what color I made his bow? Let's turn off the lights and then turn it on and see. Yes, gotta be green. It's Legolas green leaf. How good does that look? So these are pretty bright. Obviously, they look much better in the dark, which is why I've turned the lights off, but there we go. That is a double-sided lightsaber turned into a bow. Really happy with how that looks. So I'm just gonna turn everything back on. So let's get into how I started making these. So I'll talk through the bow first, and then I'll work on the arrows. So the bow, I originally started off with the 3D prints, modeled them myself. It took a little bit of trial and error to get the exact right shape and length of blades so that we could have the tips connect and all that sort of thing. So a couple trial and errors on that one until I got a bow shape that I was happy with. So I modeled that in Fusion 360, then printed it out on my Anycubic Mono X, so a really great printer. These are gigantic pieces and they actually come apart like this. So I actually have two smaller lightsabers which join together with this middle handle section to make one bigger lightsaber. So once I printed those off, I had to pull them off the print bed. Just be careful when doing that, not to break the prints or to scratch the print bed itself. Then you just want to clean them with a paper towel, wash them in isopropyl alcohol, and then wash them in warm soapy water after that. Then they're good to cure. Remove all the supports, and then you can go on to the next stage. So I've got all my parts for the bow printed, cured, supports have been removed, and now it's ready for assembly. So the few extra bits that I need is some PVC pipe, a few extra pieces, and then a bunch of couplers. So I've got couplers for the lightsaber parts, and then also couplers to join parts of the lightsaber together. So you'll see all this as it goes together, and I think I'll be able to explain it better once it's all been put together, assembled. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead now, put it all together. Super glue, that's what I always use, works really good with 3D prints and PVC. So let's get to it. So that's the main bit of assembly done. Now it is time to drill out the little buttonholes and then we can start painting. All right, there we go. That looks really cool. So the idea is that the lightsabers can come apart like this. So you have a central handle, essentially two individual lightsabers, and then on the end of the lightsabers, we'll have the ends of the bows, and then the string will attach between them. So these are essentially just long lightsabers with two caps on the ends, and then the two central parts. Alrighty, time to start painting. So I'm going to paint this first with a grey primer, and then we're going to go brown over the top of it, and then gold. So let's start off with primer. So the brown is down on all the parts, looking really good. So that was grey primer, then brown. So now it's time to tape off where I want to stay brown, and then paint the gold sections. So it'll be the two ends, and then also these ends. Let's go tape those off, paint them with gold, and then we can go from there. All right, so I've got my parts painted with the brown and the gold. It's looking really good. very happy with how that's turned out. So now it's time to go and do a black wash over all the gold sections. So essentially what I'm going to do is put some black paint on them, wipe off all the excess, and it'll leave nice black paint in all the nooks and crannies and add an extra layer of depth to this. So I'm going to go ahead now and do it over all the gold pieces. Gold is done, the washes on the parts are all done. Now it's time to do the intricate leaf detail that he has going around the handle here. So what I'm going to do is use my Tamiya gold paint and essentially just start painting it on. I'm going to have it go over the seams here between the two lightsabers for a bit of continuity and to kind of hide those seams a little bit. So if the gold design goes over it, it'll help draw your eye away from that little seam there. So this will be a long time lapse. Let's go ahead and do it. I'm going to first start off to get a nice even kind of base to the leaf design. I'm going to use some tape it off, paint it, pull that off, and then start painting all the individual leaves. It's going to take a long time, but it'll be really worth it in the end. So I've got the painting on the handle finished. Now it's time to start installing the electronics. So by design, it's essentially just two small lightsabers, which I'll have to install the electronics in. So exactly the same. You've seen me do this so many times on this channel. These are 200 lumen ALEC USB torches. They've got a USB charging port there, which is great. They're nice and bright for a small compact torch, and I've decided that I'm going to go green with this. So I think that'll look really good. Just a tip, when you're doing green and you're using this light filter method, use a couple green ones, but also chuck a yellow one in there. It makes it just pop even better. So I'm going to go ahead and do this on time lapse, but follow ahead if you can. If you need to see it more in depth, go check out my early videos. I go into more depth with those ones. But here we go, let's install the electronics. Alrighty, that is essentially complete. Let's go cut up some lightsaber blades. So I'm going to take a 92 centimeter lightsaber blade, cut it in half. So what's that? 46 centimeters long on each side. Maybe a little bit extra on the sides to make it a bit shorter. But let's cut that down to size, pop it in the ends, put on the caps, and we'll see what it looks like. So I've got my arrowheads here. They've been printed, cleaned up, and now we're ready to start molding them. So what I'm going to do is cast them, I'm going to mold them out of silicone and then cast them out of clear resin with some pigments in there to make them look really nice and like a lightsaber. So the first thing I need to do, I'm going to do these both separately. So I'm going to have two tubes that I'm going to slot these into and then cast on a mold on top of that. So I'm just going to go ahead and build the supports for them, and then we can go from there. So now it's time to start pouring my silicone to make the molds for these arrowheads. So I've got my silicone here. I'm going to add in some dye as well as a catalyst, mix it up and pour it in. So let's go ahead and do that. So now we're just going to set these aside, let them cure, and then we can move on to the next step. So I've got the molds. These have been sitting overnight, so they're nice and hard. I've already pulled one out here, works perfectly. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the other one apart now. So pull off all the plastic first. So what I'm going to be doing is, you can see on this one here, where is it? I've had to cut a bit of a groove in there. So using a really sharp knife, you can go along the side, cut that groove, and it really just allows you to pull the piece out, because grabbing it like this, I'm not going to be able to pull that out in one go. So I have to cut a little bit down, get a better hold, and then you can slip it out. So I'm going to go ahead and slowly do that with this one. So I'm going to do a zigzag, because it means if it's a zigzag, when you go to put it back together, it's got registration, so it knows where it has to go. If you do a straight line, it might move back and forth a little bit, but with these zigzags, they just go straight back together, and you know it's going to be in the right spot. So now I've got my two molds ready to go. Let's cast some clear arrowheads. Alrighty, so I've got everything I need here. I've got my scales. I'm going to do a green arrowhead as well as a blue arrowhead. So I think those will be two cool colors. I've got my clear resin. So I just use platinum, ultra super clear hardener part 1, and then the second part. So this is an epoxy. You put it in 2 parts at a 2:1 ratio and mix it up. And then, because I'm doing 2 colors, I'm going to separate it out into 2 different cups, mix in my pigments, mix it up, pour it in. Pretty straightforward. So let's go ahead and do it. Alrighty, so time to start pouring these. Firstly, I'm going to put some rubber bands just around the top where I did that zigzag cut, just to make sure that it holds itself together. I don't want to do this too tight, just loosely enough that it will hold itself together. Alright, time to pour them in. So I'm just going to add a little bit in. Swish it around so we get good coverage across the entire inside. And then just fill up the rest. Alrighty, so time to set those aside to dry. I'll probably let them sit for about 2 days before I even touch them. So I think this resin has a 3-day full cure time, so might leave them there for 2 days. After that, I'll pull them out, just have a look at them, leave them for another day before I touch them again, and then they'll be good to go. So now I want to start making the arrows that go with Legolas and Lightsaber. So I have a piece of wooden dowel here, some feathers, and we're going to work on doing the fletching that goes on the back side of the arrow here. So one thing that I need to do to start with is to cut in a groove in the back of the arrow where the string goes in. So I'm going to go ahead now and just cut that out. Be pretty straightforward. Now with some sandpaper, I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger so it's a nice size. Alrighty, there we go. So what I need to do is first mark out in thirds the lines where the feathers are going to sit on here, because you want to get it pretty much exactly on equal thirds, otherwise it's going to look a bit weird and not perfectly symmetrical. So I'm just going to draw the lines on, and then that'll give me a good guideline of where I need to actually lay the fletching on. Alrighty, so that's good to go. Now it's time to start cutting my feathers up so that I can actually use them. The plan that I'm going to do is I'm going to try to do this, cut down the center of the stem so that there's a flat bottom to then glue down. If not, I'll just try and get it as clean as possible, and then we can start gluing them on. So time to start cutting some feathers up. So got my feathers cut, ready to go. These are a lot bigger than I'm gonna need because Legolas's arrows are quite short. So I will install them first and then I'll go back and trim them a bit down to size. So I think how I'm gonna do this is with a spot of hot glue, I'm gonna tack down both ends. Then I'm gonna go around and do the twine work. So hopefully that holds it all together. If not, we might have to put a bit more hot glue around it. So let's give this a shot. Alrighty, so now taking my black twine, I'm going to go through and just do the threading on it. So let's see how this goes. I'm going to start at the bottom here and work my way up. Alrighty, so there we go. That is the fletching pretty much done with the twine or the string added. So now, going back to what I said earlier, now it's time for me to cut them to shape. So Legolas's fletchings come out not very far up this way, and they're quite long and skinny, and then they cut back a little bit up the top here, but we'll see if we can do that. So I'm just gonna try and cut them to shape. Probably easiest to do it from this direction. And there we go, looks pretty good. So I might just add some super glue around the end here to strengthen it up, but I think that is the fletching done. You can see one feather's got a slight curve to it, but you know what, yeah, a couple do. You know what, that's as best as I can get it. Not bad for first try. Alrighty, time to continue working on the other end. Alrighty, so now it's time to start attaching the arrowheads to the actual arrows. So I've already gone ahead and done this one. what we're going to be doing is drilling out a hole here, which then we can slide it on. One thing I've also done is added, I'm not sure if you can see it, but there's a little bit of gold in the detail there. So in person just makes it pop that little bit more. So let's go ahead and drill it. So I'm going to use a stepper drill bit in the middle. The thing I might do is just kind of mark where the middle is, because this has to be exactly in the middle, otherwise it can easily break the outside wall, because these walls become quite thin. It wouldn't be too much effort for it to break. So what I'm going to do now is just go with the stepper drill bit, go up to the mark that I know I need, and then we can go from there. It is now time to glue them onto the arrows. So these are my arrows. We saw how we did the feathers earlier. So now I just kind of whittled off the end here so that it'll slide even further in, because I'm using a stepper drill bit, which means it steps down. So I needed to kind of make it so the arrowhead matches that. So when this slides in, you can see it's attaching by multiple layers. So that's exactly what we want. So just going to use a tiny bit of super glue on the end of the arrow and then just glue it in. And just make sure it's straight. Perfect. Now the next one. That's how you make a lightsaber arrowhead. The last thing I'm going to do is varnish, or stain and varnish the shafts of the arrow, and that'll just give it a little bit more character. So you can see the very subtle difference between the two, but I like it that little bit darker. Right, so I'm going to put these outside to dry now, and then that should be done. And there we go, guys. That is how I went about making Legolas's bow into an awesome looking lightsaber. So that's a double-sided lightsaber, or a light bow. You can see here the arrows also look really cool. They're transparent. Really happy with how they look. The blue and the green together. So I'm really happy with how that's turned out in the end. Not sure how I'm going to display this. It's a little bit bigger than my other lightsabers, but we'll see. We'll see what we can do. And there you go, guys. That is Legolas's bow turned into a lightsaber with some additional lightsaber arrows. Hope you really enjoyed this build. It was really fun to make, something a bit different from what I normally do. So enjoy. I'll see you on the next one. Thanks, guys.